We're really excited that you've all joined us. Thank you so much. And we're really excited that Jerushia is going to join us. And I'm going to just give you a quick introduction. She's a papermaker, a printmaker, a book artist, a fiber artist based in Atlanta, Georgia. Really stunning work. She's an accomplished curator and arts educator. Her choice of media is intentional and deliberate decision. The simplicity of materials, clean lines, stark shapes, tedious and repetitive action of cutting, carving, or sewing are a meditation and prayer. She seeks to whittle the essence of the image down to intimate, poetic observations about humanity and encourage socially minded introspection. I absolutely love it. I'm so glad you're going to share more. I will say that we got introduced, Tia Blasingame helped introduce us through the book Print Artist Scholar of Color Collective. And that collective was founded in 2019 by Tia Blasingame, who's an artist and printmaker. And it's a group that brings scholars of book history and print culture into conversation and collaboration with Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we have book that includes book artists, papermakers, curators, letterpress printers, printmakers, to build community and support systems. So I'm really glad that we got introduced to Jerushia that way and that we're going to learn so much more today. So thank you, Jerushia. It's nice to be in Atlanta as well as in Two Rivers. I will hand it over and I will work on captions.
All right, can everyone hear me? Thumbs up, okay. As Stephanie said, I'm Jerushia Graham, and I'd like to thank Hamilton Wood Type Museum for this opportunity to share my work. So I'm gonna share a little bit about a couple of organizations who are important to my work, and then jump into the actual artwork and then finish with a quick demo. Let me share my screen.
That looks good. We can see it nice and full, Jerushia.
Wonderful. I'm trying to advance. It's not moving forward. That's, I'm hitting the arrow key, but it's not. There we go. So I'm the museum coordinator for the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking. That means I install and deinstall exhibitions, and I also make all of the paper for workshops that we teach. The Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking is an internationally renowned resource for the history of paper and paper technology. The museum is dedicated to collecting, preserving, increasing, and disseminating knowledge about papermaking, past, present, and future. And our permanent exhibits feature Dog Hunter's historic collection, pre-paper and the invention of paper, tools for the early industrialization of papermaking, and we're renovating the fourth space to reflect the research that happens in our building. We're in the Renewable Bioproducts Institute on Georgia Tech's campus. Oh, and then we also have 2 spaces for changing exhibitions, and we usually display 3 to 4 shows a year. And Stephanie already mentioned the book Print Artist Scholar of Color Collective. And I want to make sure to highlight them. As she said, they're the reason that I am presenting today. They do such a great job of sharing opportunities for the members to participate in talks and conferences, all kinds of things. Right now we have over 35 members. And that's Tia in the top left, the founder. And then the final organization that I wanted to highlight was Atlanta Printmaker Studio. And they're the location where I go to have access to larger print equipment. I don't personally own a press. Today I'm at the paper museum, and we have a small press here. But they're also just a great community of folks. We have an annual steamroller print, which is the picture down at the bottom. And then these shots are our old studio space. We're currently in an interim space, moving into another location. But the whole point is to provide access to artists and to also do outreach to the community to educate about or to encourage an appreciation of word printmaking. Now, most recently, I've been doing paper cuts and just using simple X-Acto, maybe a screw punch to help with circles and cutting that, and then mounting those sheets onto a base page. And I want to clarify this early on because sometimes when you're looking at the work, it can be confused with screen printing if you're not looking at it in person. I also want to mention 2 recent exhibitions I've had here in Atlanta. Over and Under, which was a 5-woman show that closed this month at Spalding Fine Art Gallery, and Freedom Isn't Free, which is a solo exhibition featuring paper cuts, textiles, and a few prints. And that opened on the 15th of the month and will be up through September 2nd. So those of you who are local, please drop in. For those of you who are not local, I'll be giving a talk on the works that you see pictured here on the slide next month for Calum Wald. The date hasn't been confirmed yet, but I will be posting that on my social media. And now on to the artworks. So the Waiting series is the first series of cuts that I did. And as you can see, I love pattern. I love playing with natural hairstyles, African-American hair. And I was trying to create images that captured kind of the spaces in between, either right before something is about to happen or right after. You as the viewer can fill in the story. And the thing that inspired this series was I was kind of in an in-between spot, having graduated grad school, working for a nonprofit, and trying to figure out what my next step was as far as my art making practice. And then I did a series of small cuts. These are 6x6, called the Exodus series, and these focused on refugee populations, really asking myself and asking the viewer to consider what defines you when you have lost everything and all that you have is what you can carry. Neighborhood, job, most worldly possessions. And then this series was featured on an online magazine for University of Georgia. I'm an alumni there. Can you hear the music? Working a little bit larger and really trying to create images that encouraged a quiet space for introspection. I love it. My brother is really into music, and I just love to see the joy and peace that comes over him when he's just kind of jamming out to his own, tunes in his headset. And so these pieces, sometimes you just need something that you can look at that will help you slow down, breathe, clear your mind. Blackbird was actually created for an portfolio exhibition at the airport, Hartsfield Airport here in Atlanta, that Atlanta Printmaker Studio arranged. And I didn't want to do a plane, so I created this bird lady, inspired by the folk tales that there were enslaved Africans that brought knowledge of flight to America with them. And one day they all just laid down their tools and flew back home to Africa. And so that's what inspired this image. Death by 1,000 Cuts. These pieces were created to explore the idea of Black liquidity. Georgia State had a conference that I did not attend, but they had done an open call to artists and scholars to reflect on the concept of Black liquidity, that Blackness is something that is changing and fluid, based on context. And that idea kept needling me, even though I didn't participate in the conference. And so I guess it was about 2 years after the conference actually happened, I created these pieces, and I wanted to create Black, almost oil-like, thick, gooey, maybe more like molasses mask that the figures interact with. And it's uncertain, or depending on your mindset when you're looking at the images, either they appear to be immersing themselves in that mass, or the mass is flowing out of them, or they're struggling to extract themselves from the mass. And then that brings us to undercurrents, which is my largest set of paper cuts. And kind of expanding on from the Death by 1,000 Cuts, looking at that mass and seeing it transform from something that's kind of thick and gooey to something that's more fluid, like water, kind of a thinner element. And then taking that concept of water and thinking about all the symbolism behind water. In this case, thinking of water as our society, that we're all in this mass together. And when you move, those ripples flow out from you and affect other people. But there's also the undercurrents, the groups of people that you are unaware of that affect your daily life, whether that's the person that's picking your food. In my case, it was becoming more aware of access. My grandmother became wheelchair bound, and in caring for her and trying to navigate buildings with the wheelchair and restaurants and things, and just being more mindful and aware in a way that I hadn't been before. We all identify with multiple levels with multiple groups. So, when I enter a room being a woman, I'm looking to see, how many women are in the space and have agency. As an African American, I'm looking to see how many people of color are in the space, are represented, have agency, those kinds of things. And so I'll click through. Witness, wave, struggle, reach, defy, reflect, support, protect, and then from where I stand were 3 paper cuts that I created for a traveling exhibition that focused on Georgia artists who were working in paper. I decided to experiment a little bit with color. This particular series, I'm looking at thinking through empathy. How do I approach, or how do I connect with someone that has, completely opposite ideals or values than myself? How do I get beyond talking points, looking at the news and seeing our politicians unable to, effectively govern because they just refuse to hear one another, refuse to find that common ground and would rather, barricade further into the groups that they identify with. And then asking myself, in what ways do I behave like that? So usually when I do paper cuts, I do 2 at a time. I have 2 pieces facing one another, and so when I cut, I end up getting a mirrored series of 2. But with these particular pieces, I chose to mount both of the cuts. With the exception of number 3. I had intention to overlap him, but once I cut it, I didn't think it worked. So I just opted to mount the single figure. And then trying to figure out how to push beyond what I've been doing with the paper cuts. So stitching through, connecting with my textile background in this case. I was stitching on handmade paper from Cave Papers, very dense, tough paper. So even though I had intended to do a series in this paper, I realized that it wasn't really feasible. But it's gorgeous paper, dyed with indigo. Here, I did a textured block and printed it multiple times to create a texture on the entire sheet of paper and then cut through. And this is UFO paper, so it actually had a slight translucency when I was cutting and kind of moving the cut around. And then when the ink dried, it's got a little bit of a shine that you don't see in the image here. And then playing with pop-up, trying to get the paper, up off the stack away from itself a little bit. And I like the motion that happens when you open up a pop-up. So this is a pop-up portfolio that showed in another exhibition, the Book is Art, which is an annual exhibition that the Educator Arts Alliance, I think it is, puts together. And so this showed at the airport as well. And I did a rust print, played with some watercolor and color pencil. And then that's the darker blue in the back is the indigo dyed sheet of paper. And this was also playing again with that flight, much like the Blackbird. And then I just wanted to offer a little context for the practice of paper cut. So paper originated in China, though it's known to have existed earlier. Its invention is attributed to Simon during the 2nd century CE. The oldest surviving example of paper cutting was excavated from a tomb, which dated back to the 6th century CE. And as paper became more affordable, the practice of paper cutting became deeply rooted in Chinese folk culture. It was widely used during spiritual rituals, celebrations of childbirth, weddings, funerals, and festivals. Traditional cuts featuring stylized animals and plants featured stylized animals and plants, which metaphorically represented concepts such as good fortune and fertility. And then these are just some other examples of the paper cuts in China. There's also a tradition in Mexico, papel picado. And these are chiseled tissue paper banners used to decorate buildings, altars, and streets for secular and religious ceremonies in Mexico. And some people believe the papel picado is related to the mate bark paper cutouts of the Tomi people. And the image in the bottom left is actually an artifact from the paper museum. While other folks refute that the two are related. You can see him working through a banner, and because it's tissue paper, cutting through many layers all at once. The chisel. And then Germany and Switzerland also have a tradition of paper cut. I don't want to mess that word up. I can't pronounce the word, but it means scissor cuts. And it dates back to the 16th century and was brought to America in the 18th century. And you can see, as you can see in the image there, focusing on very delicate cuts. And he always, or most often, pasted down on a white background. Some other examples you can see here where they brought in a little bit of color, hand coloring certain sections. So the wycinki in Poland translates to cutout, and it's been a popular folk craft in Poland since the 1800s. And it's said to have originated with shepherds who were cutting out tree bark and leathers. And you can see here that the identifying feature is the mirroring within the image, as well as bits of layered colored papers. You can't see this much in the interior wings, but the tail, you can see the different colored papers stacked on one another. So another example, and you can see she's doing this cutting with scissors. I keep pointing it out, the scissors or the chisel, because I cut with an X-Acto. And then we can't talk about paper cutting without mentioning silhouettes. And they're named after a French finance minister, Etienne de Silhouette, whose hobby was cutting portraitures. But the word silhouette also came to be associated with kind of on the cheap, because Etienne cut a lot of budgets, and he was known for that. Then there's also paper cutting tradition in Jewish culture. One of the earliest references to paper cutting is from a treatise titled The War of the Pen Against the Scissors. And it was actually cut with Hebrew text and letters within the imagery in 1345. And then during the 17th and 18th century, the paper cut became an important folk art among the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. and they use it for religious rituals, decorating for holidays, wards against evil, and memorials. I really love this this example here. That was hand cut and then hand colored. That was cut and then hand colored, and all the little animals. And then I'll quickly click through a couple of contemporary artists. Laura Cooperman. You know, I love how she's got the pieces stacking off of the wall, and sometimes she'll have a mobile element with little gears and things that actually, paper gears that actually move. Beatrice Caron. Oh, and I should say she cuts in Tyvek, so very thin but very strong fibers. And Hogarth has, I think, 2 books out with templates for paper cutting. Ove Lee, Nikki McClure, and Nikki puts out a calendar every year of her cuts. Michael Veliquette, sorry, Georgia Lowe, Elsa Mora. I really am drawn to the kind of mythical imagery, dreamlike imagery in her work, and also how she embosses or de-embosses to create a little, you know, depth to the work. Chris Nathrop, these large installations. Rob Ryan, I think he has several books out as well. Not how-to books, but just like graphic. They're not long enough to be novels. Keiko Ueda, Kara Walker, Kanako Yaguchi. And Kanako, you can see, specializes in the folding, the more mirrored kinds of cuts, where she's folding in a specific way, much like you would cut snowflakes maybe in grade school. And I showed you all that just to kind of put in context, just larger understanding of paper cutting, but also since I'm talking to printmakers, or as many of you are printmakers, ways in which you can use cuts for printing. So there's pressure printing, and I'll demo for you all pressure printing, where you don't actually ink the cut that you make, but the difference in the height of the paper when things are run through the press create kind of an image that's usually that soft, fuzzy edges. And then these are some examples here. And the Lily Carr image on the right, both of these are from an animation, like a lantern, but there's a GIF that actually shows these heads rotating, which is really fun to watch. Then Tia Blassingame, I Am. So this book is a series of portraits that are all done using pressure printing. Another way you can work with stencils is more direct application with pom-pom or dauber. And I can demo that as well. And then resources, just let this sit up on the screen for a minute, and you may be able to go back and look at the video to capture the resources. So there's pop-up resources. There's quite a few really good tutorials on YouTube. several print books. I'm a book girl, so all my other references are books. um, and resources for paper making if you're interested in pursuing that. All right. Once again, I'm Jerushia Graham, and I'm gonna transition to the demo aspect.
Mind if I ask you a quick question before you go to the demo?
Sure.
Wonderful. Doug was wondering, he would love to know your thoughts on the book cut and fold art people have done to create images in the exposed pages of a bound book. Let me reread that. He'd love to know your thoughts on the book cut and fold art people have done to create images in the exposed pages of a bound book. Doug, do you want to unmute, or are you, I feel like I don't understand the question.
Sure.
Thanks, Doug.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
When you're actually cutting into a book that already exists, kind of like is it Brian Detmeyer, or folding down to create a three-dimensional a different three-dimensional shape.
Yes, when a book is opened up from this side, you actually see images because the paper was cut and folded in such a way to leave patterns within the book. I've seen people do that. I've always thought it was a bit fascinating how that was done. To be honest with you, nowhere near as fascinating as what you just showed us. What you just showed us was amazing, just amazing. But that was another method I've seen of people doing something which I thought was rather unique. And if you've seen it, I was just curious about your thoughts on it.
Thank you, Doug.
I enjoy it when I see it. I haven't tried working in that way before. I saw that Ashley Schick was on the call, and I mentioned Brian Detmeyer. I'm hoping I'm saying his last name correctly, but he like cuts down into encyclopedias, kind of excavate. And she put his name in the chat for you. Different images. Yeah, I think it can be a lot of fun. Like any technique, it can be executed kind of basic, or it can be really like over the top. Like how in the world and why did this person do this? But it looks great, you know. I don't know if I answered your question, but I am aware of it, and it seems like I should maybe add that next time I give a presentation as another option, a way of working with paper cut.
And then Hans had a question, said you mentioned a rust print as part of a piece. Do you mind talking more about what a rust print is?
Yeah, so you can actually spritz down paper and set iron objects on it to allow for the rust to offset on the paper. So that's the basics of it, and you can experiment with what you're spritzing with, vinegar, tea, yeah, thank you, salt water. It's lots of experimentation and play, but you have to let the paper be damp and sitting for a while for it to really take.
That's beautiful. I haven't heard of that before. I'm glad you shared that. Yeah, and that was all the questions for now. Do you want to switch over to, I'll remove Spotlight, and we can give you a second to set up for the demo you were going to share?
Sure.
Awesome.
Let me turn the lights on.
Sounds good. Yeah, that was an absolutely amazing presentation. I have to admit, I quickly typed all of the artists, so I have all those tabs open. I'll try and maybe copy and paste that as she shows the demo, and then you guys can go nuts with looking at all those artists, because it'll be a fun thing to do post-hang.
All right, so.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm going to now, yeah, I'll spotlight that again for everyone.
do behind the scenes here. All right. So the pressure printing, like I said, it gives a kind of softer line, but it's a lot of fun to play around with. And I just have copy paper here. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can see your copy paper.
Copy paper, it always helps to have a couple different length scissors. So you can kind of get in there and, or X-Acto blades. And so I have a single sheet. I have 2 sheets that were glued together, 3 sheets that were glued together, 4 and 5. And the way that the pressure printing works is the more layers that you have, the darker that area is going to show when you actually do a print. So I'm going to use my single layer. Here, actually, I just need a single sheet of paper. I'm going to use this sheet as my base. And I've got scissors and copy paper and a glue stick. And I'm not going to cut anything fancy. Just I want you to be able to see pretty quickly how the pressure print works. Can you guys, my hands? And just let me know if I get out of frame.
Okay, we can see your hand and the scissors. While you cut, someone wants to know, what do you use to laminate the paper together?
I just used glue stick for this. I just used glue stick. And I'm going to glue this down.
Do you often start with a couple stacks of like pre-laminated sheets, so you have them like at the go?
Usually I don't, but I thought it might be a little quicker for demo purposes. And, you know, me gluing a bunch of papers together without creating any shapes is not the most exciting thing to watch. So.
Well, I appreciate you thinking of us.
All right, so that's one. I'm going to do another shape with 2 layers and paste that down. And when I'm going off screen, all I'm doing is hitting it with a glue stick. Yeah, cut a second one with the layer 2.
Do you mind if I ask a question while you cut and glue?
Yes, please.
Okay. It was something I found interesting when you were presenting. You said that from where I stand, you mounted both because you cut the 2 pieces. And it sounded like you often always cut 2 pieces when you are working. Is there a reason why you always cut 2 at the same time?
Well, I'm a printmaker at heart, so that multiple, I've never been really great with exact additioning, but I love multiples. So it's nice to be able to cut a second one. And like in that case, I ended up mounting them together. But when I finish, that means I have an addition of 2. If I'm exhibiting, I could have one that I can exhibit, or if it gets sold, I still have one that I can exhibit. Also, it makes it a little less precious, right? So if I want to experiment, I know that I still have one that's untouched.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate knowing more about that.
All right, I think I'm gonna just glue a 3 and a 4 down, and then we're gonna just see what we have here.
Love it. Thanks for doing a demo on your hang today. Ooh, a good question. How long does it take to normally cut a 22 by 30 paper cut?
It can take anywhere from a month to a month and a half,
Wow.
depending on how detailed I get with the smaller details.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the cutting. It takes me probably that long just to figure out the sketch. Like I do a lot of preliminary sketches.
Mm-hmm.
Like smaller sketches. Then when I think I kind of have what I want to do, I'll do a larger 2-scale sketch on tracing paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I like working on tracing paper because if I don't like something, I can just grab another sheet of tracing paper, redraw, and then Frankenstein the two things together. I like the hand from this, the whatever from the other thing. I don't know what I'm doing. Here, we'll see what this looks like.
I always love on the fly demos.
All right. And I just wanted to place a couple layers down so that you guys could see how the pressure is the same pressure running through, but the value should be different because there's more layers. Over here, I have a little plexi sheet, and I'm going to ink out, I had blue on there, but I think I'm going to change it to green. Maybe, if it lets me. I'm working with Akua inks. They're soy-based. But these we've had at the museum for a little while. We don't do as many printmaking workshops. So they're they've got a little age on them.
Mm-hmm.
But the beautiful thing about the Akuas, aside from them being soy-based, is that they don't dry real quickly. So I can, like if I ink this plate up and leave it overnight and come back, I can still push the ink around, which is nice. All right, so there's going to be a little shift. We're going to move the document camera over to the press. See. It takes a minute to get closer. And this is a little Jack Richardson etching press that I think we got from Dick Blick Art Supply. I just have a piece of newsprint down so I'm not getting ink on my bed, my press bed. And the beautiful thing about the pressure prints is that your templates, your matrix does not get inked. So I've got ink on my plate. I'm going to set the sheet down that I want the image to transfer to. And then I put my stencil down behind it, sorry. And it doesn't matter which way you turn it, but I like putting that face down, so. Yeah. I'm gonna put the blankets down. And hopefully, if I got the pressure right, we will get a nice image. Let's crank it through.
I love it. I feel like we're going on a press ride.
Yeah. The reveal. I'm taking the matrix off. I'm lifting up. I don't know if you guys can see that pattern.
Yeah, we can see that little pressure change, that shift.
Yeah, it's subtle, but this was the number, that's the 1 sheet, and there's barely any separation. This was number 3. You can see it's darker. I'm not seeing a whole lot of change between the 3 and the 4, but there's distinct difference between the 3 and the 2. Can you guys see that?
And there was a question about the inks. Are you using the etching inks or the more fluid ones?
These are the more fluid ones. I probably would get a better result with the etching ink, you know, with something with a little bit more body, because it doesn't want to spread as much. But I'm using what we have here at the museum.
Great.
So,
which is often life, right? You use what you have.
Yeah. And then it does leave subtle ghosting. And so you could run that back through and get a secondary image. I can show you a ghost print that I pulled earlier that I thought came up really nicely. Can you guys see? So this was the template here.
Oh yeah.
And this is the ghost print. This is what was left on the plate after we pulled the first print. And I ran a second sheet through and got this.
That's beautiful.
So the pressure print is a nice way to, it creates a nice image, but it often invites additional, like, so I can come back and maybe do a different kind of printing technique on here, or cutting up and doing collage using my pressure prints, or doing a different pressure print on top of it. But it's always going to give you these kind of softer lines, not hard edges.
Yeah, I think that works really well.
Any questions about the pressure print?
There were a couple more. So let's see. Somebody asked, are there certain pigments that work better with your Cura inks than others?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, every time you're working with ink, every time you're working with inks, each pigment has its own characteristic. And I would be hard pressed to tell you based on these inks that I'm using here, because they're, like I said, these are older inks, and so the character of the ink changes. Usually when I'm doing pressure prints, I am at Atlanta Printmaker Studio on the letterpress, and so I'm using letterpress inks. Which one of those? Rubber based. which are rubber-based inks. And they're a little translucent too. So I'm going to just bring my supplies to you guys. So the other way of working is to cut your stencil and actually ink the stencil up, right? Which is the more direct process. Let's see.
And have you ever tried printing, doing a pressure print on a large book press?
I have not, but I guarantee somebody in the collective probably has. I can ask.
I think it's also a good thing to try, right? See what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
And
I
one,
think it's as long as you have pressure. That's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's rolling. Like that's not an issue. That's not a thing. You know. I know you
And
guys
then-
can't see a thing that I'm doing here. I just cut a circle in a kind of moon shape. I don't know if you can see it when I move it some.
Mhm.
All right. So when you're using the stencil directly, you could just ink this up, but I'm going to use a dauber of pom-pom. So let's show you a couple of different daubers. So the tulip, can you guys see that?
Mhm.
Daubers, these little sponge daubers are found in the arts and crafts section and in the arts and crafts store in the textile section. This tulip makes fabric paints. I also got this one, and I don't have the brand name on it, from that same section. It's not tulip, it's a more dense foam, but works really nicely. And then I have a lovely brush that's made specifically for printing that I got from, oh my goodness, why am I blanking on the name? No, this is they also sell conservation supplies. Talus, yes, I got from Talus. It's a good thing you decided to stay in here with me. And then this I made in a workshop, actually in a KUA workshop. I was the student, and Steve Danino, who's an illustrator, taught the workshop. But we wrapped basically newspaper in duct tape and just used like old cotton scraps here to fold around a newsprint ball, kind of that fabric smooths it out. And then we put I think it's a chamois, a chamois on top of it. So this works as a dauber as well. And it's all just held together with a rubber band. So when your chamois gets disgusting or when you want to change to a different color, you can pull it off and put another on. I love it. So.
I love seeing the different tools people make and find, because it is amazing. You don't always have to have exactly that thing that was used for that method. I think that's fun to see the other tools people make or bring into the process.
So I'm just gonna daub a little here. And can you tell me the time? Because I have no sense of time right now.
No, you're good. I was going to wrap up here in a minute. We're coming up on the hour.
All right, so this is my printing paper. And my stencil, and if you're additioning or if you've got stencils that are cut to interact with one another, you can create a registration system. So like I can put 2 tabs of tape. I'm going in the wrong direction. Okay, this way. 2 tabs of tape off the side of my template and push pins in a piece of cardboard or anything that's thick enough that your push pins would sit in there without wanting to dislodge. But I'm freestyling, so I'm going to just take this and move it around as I see fit. You want a dauber for each color. And I'm just tapping. And you want to come straight up and down. You don't want to be sliding it because that's going to encourage it to push up underneath your stencil.
And do you use this poussoir method to just add like hand painted colored areas, or?
You can just use it for little spot coloring, but folks have done full color this way.
Wow.
If you enjoy daubing, you know it's going to take a little bit longer than inking it up with a brayer.
Yeah.
But it does also offer you more control.
Mm-hmm.
I've got green here, which is where my arm is. I'm being directed.
It's always nice to have an extra set of hands, isn't it?
It is. And again, straight up and down. And you can do as much or as little. Like I only did 2 daubs. So that's going to be a much lighter kind of almost spray paint like look. I'm going to lift it up so you can see.
Yeah.
Can you see how, let me hold it closer to it.
Oh yeah, now we can see it. Bring it. There we go.
There we go. Yeah. So this process allows you a little bit more control, right? And you can play with overlap if you want.
Mm.
So I'm going to overlap it here.
Oh yeah, even from here, we can see the difference in the darkness of the 2 circles.
And this one, I'm going to give it a lighter dusting so you can see also.
Nice.
Right? So like I said, it gives you more control. There we go. Yeah. Right.
That's
So do you guys get the idea? Yes,
yeah.
no?
I see nodding. I see thumbs up.
Okay.
I am going to wrap up. Jerushia, did you want to get on your tablet so we can see your smiling face one more time, or?
Sure.
Okay, while you do that, I might talk for a minute. I'm going to go to the gallery and remove spotlight. I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll give her a minute to get back to her computer. I want to say I'll do some wrap up stuff because we have some exciting things happening at Hamilton. In fact, Ways Goose is open, and I peeked. There are only 10 more spots of the 100 for 100. So registration is $130 at the top tier, where you get a packet full of goodies, including this patch. And anyway, that's normally $130, but we had 100 spots that we did for $100, and that is now available, but there's only 10 more spots. So I'm going to put some links over in the chat, and then I'm going to pause and say, Jerushia, it's so nice to see your face again. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I absolutely love that we got to see a demo. So thank you for sharing so much information.
Thank you, everyone that came. Can they see me? I'm not sure if they can or not. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone that came. I also wanted to mention, I forgot to mention, I will be giving a talk to the Movable Book Society on Saturday, August 7th, the first Saturday of next month at 8 o'clock Eastern time. I think if you go to their website, movablebooksociety.org, they've got listed as 7 because they're listing Central Time. And it's free. You can get the link from their website. Also, keep an eye out. I will be giving a talk specifically for the images that I didn't discuss in the presentation sometime probably mid-August.
Awesome. I have put those links over into the chat so that you guys can follow those and we can learn more from you. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
One last thing.
Of course.
paper.gatech.edu is the paper museum website. And from there you can get links to exhibitions that we've hosted, also free tutorials and those kinds of things.
I've added that one as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say, I think that's half the fun of these Hamilton Hangs is we A, get to see our friends, and B, we get to learn either new resources or new processes or about new artists. So thank you for sharing so much about your work. I love that you also included history. We don't always get that on these. And I think seeing other people who are doing it in a contemporary manner and in a historical manner gives us a lot more context. So I appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's see if there's any more Hamilton news. Oh, we do have Brenda McManus and Ned Drew next week. And they're from Bread is what they go by. And they have some really stunning letterpress work as well. So you can register. That link is in the chat. And we are doing workshops on site here at Hamilton. If you are not in the Two Rivers area, you can sign up for our online workshops. We only have one more online workshop scheduled right now, and that is with Heather Mulder. She works at Hatch Showprint, and she's going to be doing a Sintra-based workshop. I have taken the workshop in person, and it is amazing. Sintra, it's actually used for advertising, so it's another idea of using materials that weren't meant to be used in the letterpress process, but taking them and letting them work for us. And you can carve like lino, or you can even press things into the surface. Like you could press old keys or rice is one of the things she's done. And anyway, I highly recommend that class because it's really nice to have another tool in your arsenal. So that's my round out the end. I want to say thank you all for joining us today. And we're so glad you're here. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to go hang out with Rick Griffith because he's in the building for some reason. I don't know. He wandered into Two Rivers. So Jerushia, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you everyone for joining us.